The brutal murder of 18-year-old Pamela Mastropietro in Italy in 2018 shocked the entire nation, not only because of its unimaginable cruelty, but also because of the social and political turmoil it unleashed. The crime nearly sparked mass riots, with violent attacks against black migrants, fueled by xenophobia and fear. Several innocent people were targeted simply because of their ethnicity, and it was only by sheer luck that further tragedies were avoided. Pamela was born on August 23, 1999, in Rome, Italy, the only child of Alessandra Verni and Stefano Mastropietro. Her parents were successful business owners who could afford to give their daughter a comfortable life. They provided her with everything she needed: private schools, extracurricular activities, and financial security. But one thing was always lacking: time. Both were constantly busy with work, which meant Pamela spent a lot of time alone. From a young age, there were signs that Pamela was different. She was painfully shy, avoided social situations, and had difficulty making friends. Her parents assumed she would grow out of it, but as she got older, her struggles only became more apparent. By the time she reached elementary school, her teachers described her as bright, but extremely withdrawn and anxious. She suffered from severe social anxiety, sleep disturbances, and irrational fears. Concerned, her parents sought professional help, and after multiple evaluations, Pamela was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, BPD. The disorder made her emotionally unstable, impulsive, and extremely vulnerable to manipulation. Pamela struggled to recognize dangerous situations and often misplaced her trust in people. Her sense of self-preservation was almost non-existent, a fact that would later have tragic consequences. At 11 years old, her parents' marriage almost collapsed. The turmoil at home had a devastating effect on Pamela, who sank into depression and was soon diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Although Alessandra and Stefano eventually reconciled, Pamela never fully recovered. By the time she was a teenager, her mental health issues had worsened. She was prescribed strong medications to help regulate her emotions, but they only numbed her rather than healing her. Pamela continued attending regular school, but her academic performance declined, and her behavior became erratic and unpredictable. Despite her struggles, Pamela grew into a striking young woman. With model-like features and a delicate frame, she quickly attracted attention from men. But her shy and trusting nature made her easy prey. She had no idea how to handle their advances, and often put herself in dangerous situations without realizing it. Her lack of self-confidence made her eager to fit in, which left her vulnerable to bad influences. First, it was alcohol, then recreational drugs, and soon, stronger substances. She began relying on them to feel more confident, relaxed, and normal. What started as an escape quickly spiraled into full-blown addiction. By the time she was 15, Pamela's addiction was serious enough that her parents sent her to a private rehabilitation center. The treatment seemed to work, and after a few months, she returned to school and stayed clean for over a year. Then, at 17, she met Claudio Noto, a 20-year-old Romanian man. Claudio quickly gained her trust, and before long, he dragged her back into substance abuse. Under his influence, she dropped out of school, started running away from home, and became even more dependent on drugs. But the worst was yet to come. Claudio convinced Pamela to exploit herself to fund their addiction. He manipulated her into engaging in dangerous activities she would have never considered on her own. When her parents found out, they immediately contacted the police. Claudio tried to flee but was quickly arrested, and later sentenced to 4 years in prison for supplying drugs to a minor and coercing her into illegal activities. Desperate to save their daughter, Pamela's parents decided to remove her from Rome entirely. They enrolled her in a rehabilitation clinic in Macerata, a small town far from the people and environment that had fueled her addiction. The clinic was expensive, but Alessandra and Stefano spared no cost, believing it would finally help Pamela recover. The program was designed to last 3 months and included intensive therapy and medical supervision. But the reality was very different. The clinic was poorly managed, with minimal security and almost no supervision. Patients came and went as they pleased, often leaving to buy drugs or meet dealers. Pamela stayed in treatment for 2 months, and for a while she seemed to be improving. She told her mother that she felt better, and that being around people with similar struggles gave her hope. But those same people became her downfall. By early January 2018, Pamela had started sneaking out of the clinic to buy drugs again, and no one stopped her. On January 29, 2018, her parents received a phone call. Pamela was missing. The clinic claimed she had escaped, but when police reviewed security footage, they discovered a different story. Pamela hadn't run away in a panic. She calmly packed her belongings into a suitcase, walked out the front door, and no one even tried to stop her. For 2 days, Pamela's parents searched desperately for answers. Then, on January 31st, a man called the police. He had found 2 suitcases in a ditch near his home. They reeked of a foul chemical odor. Fearing they contained something dangerous, he didn't dare open them. When investigators arrived, they carefully unzipped the bags. Inside, they found the dismembered remains of a young woman. The body had been soaked in chemicals, likely to destroy DNA evidence. The severe damage made identification impossible without DNA testing. But one look at the suitcases was enough for Alessandra and Stefano. They belonged to Pamela. Autopsy results couldn't determine the exact cause of death, but the level of mutilation and chemical exposure suggested a deliberate attempt to cover up the crime. Police immediately launched an investigation, tracing Pamela's final movements through surveillance footage. The last known images of her alive showed her walking toward a bus stop, occasionally flagging down passing cars. Then, after 15 minutes, a taxi pulled over. Pamela spoke briefly with the driver, got inside, and was never seen alive again. The trail of the taxi Pamela had entered grew cold as soon as it moved beyond the reach of street cameras, but investigators didn't give up. They were able to trace the vehicle's license plate. Soon after, the taxi driver was tracked down. When he saw Pamela's photo, he immediately remembered her, and his testimony added a critical twist to the case. According to the driver, Pamela approached him at a bus stop with a suitcase that evening, asking to be taken to the train station. She planned to catch a train to Rome, but when she found out the train had already left, she told him she was going to wait for the next one. The driver said he offered to take her to his home instead, and to his surprise, she agreed without hesitation. He later admitted that they had engaged in sexual activity, claiming it was entirely consensual. The next morning, Pamela reportedly felt ill and asked to be dropped off at a small park instead of returning to the station. The driver suspected she was suffering from withdrawal symptoms, especially since the park was known as a hotspot for buying illegal substances from undocumented migrants. However, he decided it wasn't his place to intervene and left her at the park, just as she asked. That was the last time he saw her. His version of events was quickly corroborated, with surveillance footage confirming he had dropped Pamela off at the park. While he was cleared of suspicion regarding Pamela's death, her parents later tried to hold him responsible for what they believed was an exploitative encounter. They argued that given her condition, Pamela wasn't capable of giving informed consent. However, the court sided with the driver and acquitted him of all charges. At the park, Pamela encountered a man known as Desmond, a Nigerian national with ties to the drug trade. Desmond was already on law enforcement's radar, and thanks to police surveillance, he was soon located and arrested on suspicion of being involved in Pamela's death. During his interrogation, Desmond admitted he had sold Pamela a dose of a prohibited substance, which he paid for with a necklace. However, he maintained that after the transaction, she had left, and he had no further involvement with her. His account was verified by witnesses, but Desmond remained in custody as investigators were still considering whether he had any role in Pamela's death or whether he had been part of covering up evidence. About 15 minutes after purchasing the substance, Pamela was caught on security cameras entering a nearby pharmacy. She bought a syringe and left shortly after. The footage also showed another man entering and leaving the pharmacy around the same time. He seemed to know Pamela, though he kept his distance. The man was later identified as Innocent Osagala, a 30-year-old undocumented Nigerian immigrant, also involved in selling substances. Innocent quickly became a key suspect in Pamela's case. Law enforcement was able to obtain his address from Desmond, who had been offered a deal in exchange for his cooperation. Osakale lived just a few blocks from the park where Pamela was last seen. Investigators speculated that she might have gone to his home to use the drugs she had just purchased. A police team was sent to his apartment, but he wasn't there. However, with a search warrant in hand, the authorities proceeded to investigate his residence. What they found was chilling. The apartment showed signs of a hasty cleanup, with multiple bloodstains scattered throughout the place. Officers also discovered women's clothing that matched the description of what Pamela had been wearing the night she disappeared. DNA testing confirmed the blood belonged to Pamela, and her parents later recognized the clothing as hers, identifying it from the suitcase where her dismembered remains had been discovered. The pieces were starting to fall into place. In the bathroom, investigators uncovered additional blood traces and 4 empty bottles of chlorine bleach. These grim findings eliminated any lingering doubt about the crime scene's significance. Forensic experts speculated that Innocent had lured Pamela to his apartment, where they likely used drugs together. He might have then subjected her to violent assault, ultimately taking her life. The subsequent dismemberment and use of bleach seemed to be an attempt to erase his DNA from the scene. Surveillance footage from nearby cameras showed Innocent making his way to a ditch where Pamela's dismembered body was later discovered in suitcases. However, Innocent wasn't alone. The footage revealed he had arrived in a car, driven by another man, with a third person in the vehicle. This suggested that more people might have been involved in disposing of the body. The car was traced to a man named Lucky Aulo, a friend of Desmond's. Lucky was arrested the same day, and it was determined that he had driven the vehicle used to transport the suitcases. Desmond, along with Lucky and Innocent, were all in the car. Although initially denying his involvement, Desmond eventually provided a location for Innocent, though he claimed not to know what was inside the suitcases. Desmond and Lucky both insisted they were simply helping Innocent dispose of what he had described as trash. Innocent was arrested on February 2, 2018. As expected, Innocent denied any wrongdoing, offering a bizarre and improbable version of events. He claimed that he had met Pamela in the park after she bought drugs and was looking for a quiet place to use them. He invited her to his home, and she agreed. Along the way, they stopped at a pharmacy where Pamela bought a syringe. Once at his apartment, Pamela took the first dose but wasn't satisfied with the effect. She allegedly offered to pay him with physical intimacy in exchange for more drugs, which Innocent agreed to. After the second dose, they were intimate, but soon after, Pamela began gasping for air, convulsing, and lost consciousness. Within minutes, she appeared lifeless. Innocent insisted that Pamela died from an overdose. Panicked and fearing the consequences, he decided to dispose of her body. His plan was to dismember her, place her in suitcases, and discard them outside the city. He used bleach to destroy his DNA, believing no one would believe that their intimacy was consensual, especially given the circumstances. When asked about the involvement of his friends, Lucky and Desmond, Innocent revised his story. He claimed they had arrived at his apartment shortly after he and Pamela had taken the drugs. He alleged that he passed out, and when he woke up, his friends informed him that Pamela was dead. They supposedly suggested dismembering her body and packing it into suitcases. Verifying Innocent's statements proved difficult, as he had effectively destroyed much of the evidence. However, forensic investigators soon discovered critical details that Innocent had overlooked. One major clue was found under Pamela's nails, where traces of Innocent's skin cells were discovered. This indicated that Pamela had fought back during the assault and had scratched her attacker. Both Desmond and Lucky denied being present at Innocent's apartment during the crime. They provided alibis connected to their illicit drug activities, hoping that their confessions would result in lighter sentences than being charged with assault or a violent crime. Their alibis were corroborated, but questions lingered about their involvement in transporting the grisly contents of the suitcases. While all 3 suspects remained in custody, Forensic teams continued their examination of Pamela's remains to determine the exact cause of death. Toxicology reports showed high levels of prohibited substances in her system, but they weren't fatal, making it unlikely that the drugs caused her death. Further investigation revealed 2 penetrating stab wounds on her right side, which had been inflicted while she was still alive. The damage to her liver was significant, and it was clear that she had died from these wounds, resulting in severe blood loss. The dismemberment had occurred several hours after her death. During later interrogations, Desmond and Lucky admitted that Innocent had confided in them about a woman he had taken advantage of while she was unconscious from substance use. They suspected the woman was Pamela, but claimed they didn't know what had happened to her afterward. The investigation into Pamela's death had made little progress for over 6 months, with authorities lacking enough evidence to bring the case to trial, despite Innocent being the primary suspect. In a bold move, investigators planted an informant in Innocent's cell to gain his trust and extract a confession. This strategy proved successful. Innocent formed a friendship with his cellmate, and eventually admitted that he had noticed a young woman in the park acting strangely. According to Innocent, she was so trusting that she agreed to accompany him to his home and accepted drugs from him without questioning their contents. When the woman became unconscious, Innocent saw it as an opportunity to exploit her vulnerability, thinking it would be payment for the drugs since she had no money. However, Pamela regained consciousness, began to resist, scratched him, and threatened to call the police. This enraged Innocent, and in a fit of rage, he grabbed a knife and stabbed her in the liver. Moments later, Pamela appeared to stop breathing, and Innocent, assuming she was dead, decided to dispose of her body. He began dismembering her, and when her limbs didn't fit in the suitcases, he became panicked. When Pamela suddenly woke up, screaming and crying for help, Innocent panicked even more and stabbed her again, this time delivering the fatal blow. The informant recorded Innocent's confession, which became a pivotal piece of evidence in the case. The informant later testified in court. Additionally, Lucky came forward, revealing that Innocent had called him, likely during the attack, asking for help with what he referred to as trash. Lucky heard faint cries in the background, but dismissed them as noise from the television. The trial for Innocent, Desmond, and Lucky began in the spring of 2019. By this time, prosecutors had gathered substantial evidence proving Innocent's guilt. Toxicology reports confirmed that Pamela had not died from an overdose, as Innocent had claimed. The cause of death was 2 deep stab wounds to her liver, which caused fatal blood loss. Furthermore, forensic evidence revealed that the dismemberment had begun while Pamela was still alive. Pamela's liver had sustained significant damage, and it became clear that the cause of her death was blood loss from these injuries. The dismemberment of her body occurred several hours after her death. During the investigation, both Desmond and Lucky revealed that Innocent had spoken about a woman he had taken advantage of while she was unconscious due to substance use. Although they believed the woman was Pamela, they claimed they had no knowledge of what happened to her after that night. For over 6 months, the investigation into Pamela's death stalled. The authorities didn't have enough solid evidence to bring the case to trial, though Innocent was still the main suspect. In an unexpected move, investigators planted an informant in Innocent's prison cell. Over time, Innocent developed a rapport with his cellmate, eventually confessing that he had noticed a young woman in the park, acting strangely. He explained that the woman was so trusting, she had agreed to come with him to his home, where she accepted drugs from him without question. When she became unconscious, Innocent saw an opportunity to take advantage of her, thinking it was a form of payment for the drugs, since she had no money. But when Pamela regained consciousness, she resisted, scratched him, and threatened to call the police. Innocent, furious, grabbed a knife and stabbed her in the liver. Moments later, Pamela appeared to stop breathing. Believing she had died, he quickly decided to hide the body in a suitcase. Realizing it wouldn't fit, he resorted to dismembering her. While cutting her limbs, Pamela suddenly came to, screaming for help. Terrified, Innocent stabbed her again in the liver, this time dealing a fatal blow. The informant recorded Innocent's confession, which became a crucial part of the case. The informant later testified during the trial, adding weight to the charges. Furthermore, Lucky Abuelao came forward and revealed that Innocent had called him during the attack, asking for help with disposing of trash. Lucky admitted hearing faint cries in the background, but dismissed them as television noise. The trial for Innocent Osegole, Desmond, and Lucky Abuelao began in the spring of 2019. By that point, prosecutors had gathered enough evidence to prove Innocent's involvement. Toxicology reports confirmed that Pamela did not die from a drug overdose, as Innocent had claimed. Instead, she had suffered 2 deep stab wounds to her liver, leading to fatal blood loss. Forensic evidence also confirmed that the dismemberment occurred while she was still alive. In May 2019, Innocent Osegole was convicted of committing non-consensual intimate acts with Pamela, who was vulnerable due to her substance use and mental state. He was also found guilty of violence, desecrating her body, and attempting to destroy evidence. Innocent was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. All his appeals were rejected. The case stirred a public outcry in Italy and beyond, prompting debates about immigration, criminal justice, and how to protect vulnerable individuals. Innocent's actions, combined with his undocumented status, intensified discussions about the responsibilities of host countries in managing migrant populations and addressing systemic issues that allow such crimes to occur. There was no direct evidence linking Desmond or Lucky to the violent crime, so they were not charged as active participants. However, the court concluded they were likely aware of the contents of the suitcases and understood the reason Innocent had asked for their help to dispose of them in the ditch. Despite this, they were convicted of illegal substance distribution and sentenced to 5 years in prison each. The case of Pamela Mastropietro sparked significant media attention and ignited public outrage against Black migrants. In one particularly disturbing incident, an Italian man named Luca Trani armed himself with a handgun and began shooting at a bus full of African passengers. 6 innocent people were injured, but luckily, no one was killed. Trani was arrested and admitted that his actions were motivated by revenge, though he denied feeling guilty. He was later convicted and sentenced to 12 years in prison. And so, this tragic story came to an end, full of pain and loss. But behind every case like this are real lives, and it's important to remember the value of justice and protecting those who cannot stand up for themselves. Click the subscribe button so you won't miss the next gripping story, and don't forget to give this video a like if it intrigued you. Share it with your friends, and leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. Your support helps me continue to create these stories for you. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next episode. Stay safe and take care.